It's kind of interesting, this whole realization game. It's kind of like you've lost something really valuable. Let's say you made some documents or something, and they were inspirational documents, and you can't find them. They're somewhere in your big house. They're under the rug. They're somewhere. You don't know where they are, but you're looking for them. You're looking for them constantly. It's very important to you to find these valuable things you've lost. And the important thing is that you're looking for them, but you can't remember. You can't remember what's on the documents. You kind of have a feeling these were really good. I got to find them. That's kind of like searching for, what are you searching for? Searching for something bigger than you are, something fuller, something richer, something permanent. You know there's something there, and you're looking for it. There's two significant things. You know you don't remember what it is you lost. That's number one. Number two, you're looking for it. You've made an effort. What is it? I've lost something, or I remember something. I have to find it. So you're looking all over your house in your own space. You're not looking outside of your space. You can't. So you're looking in your own house. You're looking for this something. You're going everywhere. You go outside, you go for a walk, you go in the kitchen. Maybe you'll find it in the kitchen. There's food in the kitchen. Surely food will tell me what I've lost. It doesn't, but you have a good time. I have some good food. You go for a walk, you have a nice walk. And in a sense, you've become a seeker, right? A seeker knows there's something. On an intuitive level, on a feeling level, you know there's something missing. So you go looking for it, and you look for it in your own environment, in your own space. You look at it with your thinking, in your heart, your mind. You look at it in your activity, in your family, your society, the world, and you're looking for it everywhere. But if you're a seeker, by definition, you haven't found it. Never mind, you don't know what it is you've lost. This feeling that you've lost something or you don't remember something is the feeling that you know there's something more. Since you don't know what it is, but you're still looking for it. It's important to be looking. I certainly felt that way. Always felt that way. That there was something missing. Not this kind of interesting. It's not that you know what's missing. You don't have the sense of the benefits or the love or the joy or the stability or all those things that you feel you've missed. Well, you don't have those now because you're the seeker after those things. And once you've looked everywhere you can think to look, maybe your next thought will be, well, what is it? What is this thing? Perhaps I had glimpses of it when I was a kid or when I was a young adult or even recently. I had some glimpses of what I made. Well, hey, can that be permanent? You might ask yourself. Can I have that all the time? Can I have that good feeling, that stable feeling? Can I have it all the time? So I'm going to read something to you that, for me, this was some years ago, that demonstrates what you're looking for, but also kind of why you've lost it. I have to change my glasses. Okay. Some years ago, I was walking alone at night outside an hotel in Italy, having regular thoughts with no particular or special experience when suddenly, without warning, or expectation. I was robbed of my normal, everyday experience. Until then, I had been totally unaware that my mind had been anything other than ordinary in any way. This was the worst possible experience I had ever had. I was shocked, unaware. I was lost, uprooted, unprotected. There was no one home. The experience was of total heavy oppressive weight. I had lost something that a moment earlier I did not even know I had. I was deeply dull. What had just happened to me? There was nothing specific that I could pinpoint other than the absence of the light of consciousness itself. How long could this possibly last? I was extremely relieved when the expansion, the silent self-effulgence and self-knowingness of my normal experience slowly returned over the next 10 minutes. Overwhelming contentment and a warm, unbounded safety net again filled my awareness. After this brief visit into nothingness, I consciously appreciate the wakefulness of the self and never again forgot it. This experience really started me thinking, what was it that I had lost? I realized that I had momentarily lost both my universal and my individual identity. I had become a godless nobody in a universe of nothingness. This loss was unbearable. Yet what I momentarily lost was not even noticed until it disappeared. I had to conclude that however far apart unbounded consciousness and regular life might appear to be, they obviously coexist face to face all the time. But reality needs to be known and acknowledged. I had been experiencing my mental and physical life along with unbounded consciousness. This experience was so spontaneous, so effortless, so simple that I did not have any conscious recognition of the natural state of oneness that exists between the two. The temporary experience of only my body consciousness, only material, sensory experience was profoundly disturbing. The difference between these two states was huge, almost unfathomable, and one without the other was unbearable. It's not even possible. The natural state of pure consciousness had not been recognized. I certainly recognized it when it was gone. I learned more from the absence of self-awareness in those 10 minutes than I had learned in years of flashy experiences. I realized suddenly that everyone has, and is fundamentally the self-awareness of unity. It just is not recognized or accepted as significant. Self-awareness, whether we know it or not, is the very natural and substance of everyone's life. In the moment of loss, that I had lost the connectedness to existence itself. Almost done. I had lost the connectedness to existence itself, to God, to myself, to everything that mattered. I had transitioned from a state of clear awareness to another state of no awareness. What an eye-opener that this was even possible. So this is one of the first chapters in this book of mine, The Landscape of Enlightenment, which I wrote a few years ago. And there's a lot more in it. So, isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that, I have had experiences all my life of a flashy nature, deep nature, expanded nature. Since a little kid, I had all this stuff. But I didn't this experience was quite a few years ago, but I didn't get what was the basis of all that experience, whether it's my running around in a relative doing business or art or whatever it is, or all these flashy experiences that I had. What was the basis? What was the screen on which it all played out? It's the same screen of consciousness. It's the same unbounded consciousness that everybody has. It's not mine. It's everybody's. It's universal. We miss it. Why do we miss it? Same reason I missed it. It's just everywhere. It's all those things. When I was giving this analogy about looking for pure consciousness, everywhere I went, I couldn't find it. It's because it was everywhere that I was going. It was in the kitchen. It was on the walk. It was inside. It was outside. It was everywhere. That everythingness of consciousness makes it elusive. Why? It's both so subtle and both so everywhere that it's easy to miss. It's like talking about something that's everywhere. You've always had it. You'll always have it. You're never going to lose it. It's not something other than you. That as a seeker, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for something grand, something bigger, better, fuller, richer. And I'm not saying it isn't those things. It is those things, but having preconceived ideas of what self-awareness, pure consciousness, realization is, they become hurdles to the experience. They become something you have to jump over. If you look for self-awareness over there, or up there, or down there, it's there, of course. But to find its localized existence or presence in a specific area of your consciousness is not easy. In flashy experiences, you have experiences of the divine or heaven or expansion, you find it momentarily. Momentarily is the life we live anyway. Everything we do is momentary. We have this, we have that, we forget this, we remember that. Life in general, it's kind of interesting because whatever we do, whatever our senses experience, if we see something, we tend to see just that one thing. We're lost in the sight of what we see. We're lost in the hearing of what we hear. The self-awareness that is naturally there before you started having experience, in the process of experience, and in the objects that you see or whatever you hear. That self-awareness is there. It's throughout the whole experience. So this self-awareness, that it's that field of consciousness that doesn't change. It's not other than what we are. It's not something we're going towards by getting rid of this, that, or the other thing. Life isn't structured in such a bleak manner. Life is structured in such a way that just having a physiology, having the senses, having life here on earth is a process of gaining more and more and more and more. Even though many people have described that the first experiences of self-awareness aren't tangible, they're big, unbounded. And one of the, excuse me, In the same way that we're looking for, when we're looking for self-awareness, we're looking for something specific. Pure awareness, self-realization, in its early days is not specific, it's unbounded, it's abstract. And of course, the first thing you might ask yourself, well, what the heck is this? What is this unboundedness I feel? What is this stability I feel? It's the only thing in your life that isn't changing. It's just there. If you're able to look, or you look at this awareness that you are, this inherent, unbounded feeling, it's not really unbounded, but it's there. It's everywhere. There's no end to it or beginning to it. It's just a field of consciousness. In the early days, it feels empty. Many people say, well, what's there? They call it silence in some movements, pure silence, nothing else. Everything else is gone. I didn't have that experience that everything is gone. You continue to act and you continue to do what you do. You continue to have your sensory input. You do what you're having a life. And I say to myself, self, what is this? What is this thing? What is it? You know, when I was very young, I thought of it. I thought, this is a basket. It's a huge basket. It's a very simple way of looking at it. I was a kid. I bet you everything fits in this basket. It looks like there's lots of space in it. And the closer I looked, the more liveliness I saw to that space of consciousness. And the reason I saw that there was something to it is because there was something to it other than emptiness. Close proximity to your own self, the presence of the self, whatever is being thought at that time begins to turn into or known as that consciousness itself. It's a delightful experience of adding more and more and more. Understanding and the experience aren't separate from each other. They're the same thing. Think of understanding. It just, I think it's misunderstood badly. Imagine reading a book that has no punctuation or grammar or commas or periods or paragraphs or chapters. How could you understand it? That's a bit like my book before somebody edited it. Okay, not quite, but close. How can you understand it? Everything's running into each other. There's no logic to it. There's no sequence to it. There's nothing to it. So as soon as you start putting the commas, the exclamation mark, and so forth, all the different punctuation, it starts making sense. Pure consciousness is like that. Self-awareness is like that. I hate using the word realization because you come up with all kinds of ideas what it is. And those ideas are all wrong if you don't have it. They have to be wrong. If you knew it, you explain it the way it really is. Of course, it really is nice. Your own nature, your own inherent nature, which is inside you, outside you, is everywhere. When you begin to realize that you are something bigger than the little self. It's delightful. It's wonderful. But it's quiet. It's quiet. That quietness is the self. What what many people say, or many teachers say, that this is the state we're after, and they're right, completely right. We're after this quiet, unbounded silence or stillness that is the foundational experience of everything else. The key is, this has certainly been my experience, it's the foundational experience. It's not the end experience. It's the start of self-realization. It's the start, the stillness. One of the chapters in this book that I was reading, it says I say silence is not silent. Why do I say that? The reason is that somebody's having the experience. It's not nobody having it, somebody's having it. That somebody having the experience, that's something, it's an experience. You're aware of it. You're not aware of it, you're aware of it. Being aware of it, the experience is lively, it's awake. And you get to see that it isn't really inside you only, it's everywhere. You and the understanding steps in and begins to get what your experience is. This understanding is awake. It's awake to itself. And the longer you have this experience of self-awareness, conscious self-awareness, the longer you have it, the more you begin to understand. Understanding makes it grow. Understanding of your own experience, your inner experience and outer experience, and the unity between the two, understanding that experience makes the experience beneficial consciously. You begin to see and know what all these different qualities throughout the ages that teachers, spiritual teachers or mentors have said. What is it you get from this experience? You get these benefits, and these benefits are what? If I were to say the primary benefit of an awake mind and an awake heart is on the feeling level. What do you feel? What does an awake person feel? You finally got something that can't be taken away. It's permanent. It's stable. It's yours. You own it. You can't own something that's going to go away or decrease or even increase because you don't know where it's going. It's going over there. It's going over here. Somebody's going to take it. Your house won't last forever. This won't last. This, money, whatever, life, change. Pure consciousness doesn't change. Once you gain it, it's yours. You have an iron-bound connection to it. It's there all the time. But that's not good enough. That's not good enough for me. It's not good enough for anybody just to say it's always there. That's a good start. As long as it's a pleasant experience, which it is, I'll take that as a start. I guess the second thing that I would say is a tangible benefit of an awake mind and an awake heart is that you feel good. That doesn't mean you're always smiling and you're a bliss ninny or something. Nobody would describe me as a bliss ninny, okay? Anybody who knows me wouldn't describe me that way. But there is a sense of contentment, stability, a feeling that you belong. Why would I say that? You get a feeling that you belong. You belong in this. You belong on earth. Not only do you belong on earth, you belong in the whole structure of the universal existence. You belong. And over time, that feeling will become not only do you belong there, you are central to it. Your personal experience, your individuality is central to the experience of the whole universal creative process. The other thing that certainly happened for me is that as there was this sense of this bigger self, a bigger knower, a quality came, a quality developed that I hate using the word happy. I don't know why. Maybe it's my Finnish heritage or something, but a very quiet sense of contentment developed. And it's always there. You might want to, ask my wife if she agrees with that or not. But it's not that anything in my life or anybody's life goes away when the experience of conscious self-awareness is there permanently, or unified consciousness is there permanently. Nothing goes away. Where's it going to go? I've heard so many people talk about, when I woke up, everything, nothing really mattered. It was no longer important to me. Everything just flowed, naturally flowed. I had this big unbounded feeling, and I was kind of sort of separate from everything. Not that I lost interest, but it wasn't important. That certainly didn't happen to me. Quite on the contrary. I got interested in everything. I wanted to know more, not less. More and more. And if you have this experience in the early days of waking up that there's some separation there, it's temporary. I've seen that over and over again. It's because you're having this new experience, you don't know what it is, and you work it out within yourself. If you know somebody who's had this experience for a long time and explain it to you, then it is helpful. So I could this is probably when I get into something more inspirational, let's call it. And before I do that, the experience of realization is, I can't emphasize how natural it is, how simple it is. And, I've talked to people who have big flashy experiences, and those big flashy experiences, they're coming and they're going and this and that. Those people are often the hardest people to talk to because they're so stuck on those beautiful things that they see that incidentally go away. They're not there all the time. Self-awareness takes these peaks of whatever your experiences are, whether they're of a celestial nature, divine nature, mundane nature, knowledge nature, whatever they are, artistic nature, and whatever your low experiences are, whatever they are, anxious, depression, whatever, this conscious self-awareness kind of what? Becomes the field in which they all happen. They continue to happen, but they do not obscure that consciousness anymore, ever again. Whatever they are, whether you see angels or devas or had bad days, good days, sunny days, dark days, they're all in that same field, that same basket, that same wholeness of totality that you've become, that you know and that you experience. They're one experience, always there. I think I've covered what I said on my little invitation on my poster that I made, what I was going to talk about. So I want to talk a little bit about what other people are experiencing that I know. And, it's been very inspirational to me. As a matter of fact, it's why I finally went public, as it were, that I saw other people start having similar experiences to mine. They woke up. They they started experiencing pure consciousness all the time, and they said, "Whoa! I have all this. I have this bliss. I have this knowledge. And yet, I'm still living my normal life." I had one person ask me, "Well, how is that even possible? How is it possible that I look at Uncle Joe and he's still a jerk?" And I have that same response to him, except that I still have that. I have that unbounded consciousness, or that pure consciousness, that self-realization is always there. Self-realization doesn't feel like self-realization at all. It feels like what I've always had, and there's other stuff. Whereas it's important, it doesn't overshadow that experience. And this is when I go into my own experience where everything that, I'm just trying to make it simple, early on when I was much younger, I had these experiences, self-awareness, this, that, the other thing, big unboundedness. And then I started having, seeing the movement of that consciousness. And I said to myself, I had an inquiring mind, I still do. And I said, well, what's all this movement? I thought this was supposed to be silent. Did I ever tell you the story? I think I'll say it anyway. Early on in my career of going after self-awareness and all that kind of stuff inside experience, I was invited to go to a course, and there were some of you have heard this story, so bear with me. And there were 3 criteria. There are 3 kind of courses I could go to. One was a nil experience course, one was a hazy experience course, and one was a clear experience course. So this was early on. I was really young. So guess which one I went to? I went to the nil one because I've been having this experience of this unbounded field. Yeah, there was all kinds of stuff there, but I knew that it was this clarity of pure consciousness that was key. And that was the foundational experience of all the other stages. So I got to the course, and nobody had any experience there. Zero. What nil meant, you don't have any pure consciousness. You don't have any nothing. Zero. That was an eye opener for me. Of course, I was kind of naive. So that's another indication that how simple pure consciousness is, how simple self-awareness is. But it's kind of where we want to get to. Let's say we've arrived, we're on our way to a beautiful city somewhere. Now we've arrived in the city, but we haven't explored the city. And the city is your environment, is the universe. It's the whole show of existence. It's all open to our consciousness. I'm going to just spend 1 minute on 1 or 2 minutes on what's possible to experience. And of course, I haven't experienced anything near what's possible, but maybe my next meeting, I'll talk about these divine levels of consciousness, the levels where the heavens of consciousness, the gods and goddesses and all that esoteric stuff that develops after pure consciousness is there in a full way where it can maintain its subtlety while you're having these subtle experiences. But just to go into that a wee bit right now. And I think I've said this many times, I'm not smart enough to describe anything that I'm not experiencing. If I'm describing it, I'm having it. If I'm describing it wrong, then I'm having it wrong. If I'm describing it right, then I'm having it right. So I have this experience of pure consciousness. It's always there. It's been there for my entire life. At least it seems that way to me. I do not remember a time when at least this unbounded consciousness, this field of consciousness was not there. It's always been there. As well as this one layer of consciousness, call it one layer, it's pervasive, it's inside, it's outside, it's everywhere. It's the whole process. When I looked at this consciousness years and years ago, and still if I look at it now, it's awake. It's awake to itself. That wakefulness is something. I see that something that it is. It's patterning, it's vibrating, it's shimmering, it's awake, awake, awake. When I look closer, what do I see? I see waves of light, waves of knowledge. And I know they're knowledge because I can see pure consciousness. I can see a wave within them. It's like watching a wave in an ocean. And I can see that wave come up. It's very specific. I'm just looking at one wave. There's innumerable, unbounded number of waves. I see specific waves. And these waves have form. And I say to myself, what the heck are these forms? Well, let's call them the laws or aspects of nature. Our bodies are made of what? Fire, air, water, earth on a objective level. On a subjective level, you could say we're an ego and mind, we're senses inside, we have inside experience, we're a heart, mind, and so forth. And I started seeing all this stuff, and as I saw this stuff, I saw how my body was related to the environment. I saw these laws of nature, streams of light and all kinds of stuff. And eventually I started I began to understand on a subtle level first what I was experiencing. Then I started seeing it feels like I'm in some kind of, I hate using this word, but I'm going to use it anyway, some kind of heaven. And I'm always in that heaven. It's delightful because I see stuff. And this heaven has stuff in it, which maybe I'll get to next time. But once I started seeing that kind of field, then my whole field of understanding expanded to, let's call it cosmic proportions. Okay. This may be a little hard to understand, but if I continue these lectures, which I think I will, then I'll get into that stuff more and tie it all together more. So understanding, and there's an inspiration to where these things could go, where they start, what you need to have, what you don't need to have. You don't need to have these flashier, esoteric, heavenly experiences that I'm talking about, but they fascinate me because I've always had them. And ultimately, I started experiencing not just the stars and all this and the cosmos in terms of the self, they're all in me, and I'm all in them. And then I'm not going to talk about God today, and God is today, but I will in future talks. I think it might be time to take some questions if anybody has any, and I will attempt to answer them.
Hi, everyone. This is Kathy. You guys can either type your question into the chat, or if you want to ask it yourself, then just raise your hand and we'll go due process. Here's a question that's come up. I'd like to ask what you think about how the foods we eat and our health condition matter to gain enlightenment. I'd appreciate it if you would answer. Thank you.
Well, because anything that happens to the mind, anything that happens to the heart happens within a physiology, happens within a body. So obviously the health of the body, and this is a delicate point because, and the reason I say that, it's very important you eat the best food you can or the best food you can buy and this and that. It's important to look after your body. It's no different. Imagine you're a young man and you're going into some sports, and your coach will tell you, you better not eat that food. You better eat this kind of food because you'll be stronger, blah, blah, blah. Consciousness is like that. A healthier body has an easier access to subtle experience. However, consciousness is so universal, so unbounded, it's not limited by anything whatsoever. I'm not saying you do bad things. I'm saying that by itself, it'll tell you what you should do. Well, that wasn't a good experience. I got a really bad hangover from that. So as a consequence, my practices, spiritual or otherwise practices, my prayer, mindfulness, whatever I'm doing is not so helpful. You get to know that. And as you mature in experience and understanding, you look after your body because it's important, but nothing you do will ultimately prevent you from waking up. Okay?
Good. So there's a gentleman called Sanjay who has a question. Sanjay, would you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Yes, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. Hi, Harry. I had a question because I've been listening to your videos for some time, and thank you for sharing your experiences. I'm asking this question particularly because you have been a student with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, right? And you mentioned that. And in the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, in the tradition, I think they talk about especially I think Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and they talk about the 7 stages of development, and they also talk about like self-realization, unity consciousness, or and then they talk about beyond consciousness. They call it the Brahman consciousness, and then they call about Parabrahman and all that. They say even consciousness is within the realm of creativity, within the realm of creation, and by grace you go beyond even that. It's called the great awakening in the Vedas and all that, they say. And then you have the experience of God. So I just wanted to get your perspective on that. So because many traditions, they say that you can directly experience God through surrender or through the path of devotion or the heart, instead of going through self-realization, um, the non-dual consciousness experience and all that.
What's the question? That
Yeah,
covers
the question.
that covers a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So my question was, how do we, I wanted to know your thoughts about reaching beyond consciousness into Brahman consciousness. Is it how is it possible? Or
It's possible for everybody. The thing is, the great rishis, all of them, had grand vision. They could see the whole show, and I've alluded to, there's these beginning stages of consciousness, where you get self-awareness, pure awareness, and that's it. There's not much else there. But there are other stages. There are other states of consciousness once you've established the first state. There's expanded states of consciousness. In my opinion, they go on and on forever. They don't ever stop. And if you want to call them the things that Maharishi called them, he called them cosmic consciousness, unity consciousness, Brahman consciousness. They're all specific states with specific qualities. And these qualities are open to everybody, but you still, just like you're going to school, you have to go through grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3, and in every one of those states, grade 2, and in kindergarten you suddenly learn something. Oh, I'm so great, look, I know what 1 and 1 is, it's 2, it's great. And then you go to grade 2 and you say, oh dear, when I was in kindergarten I only knew 1 and 1. Now I know a lot more, and I'm smart. In every state of consciousness, you have that feeling that you know everything, but it's only abstract. And you get to know more and more as you go through these states of consciousness. Um, Everybody's evolving anyway, whether you meditate, or whether you pray, whether you do mindfulness, you're evolving. Whether you do nothing, just live a nice life, you're evolving. The question is, how fast do you want to go? That's it. And I can get into, and I plan to get into these higher states of consciousness more and more. Um, I don't think there's enough time to go into these higher states.
yeah, because many of them in the non-dual teachings, especially I think they say consciousness is all. They don't recognize something beyond consciousness. That is probably
There is nothing beyond consciousness. There's just like there's nothing beyond your experience. You're an individual. If your experience stops as an individual, you stop having experience. Now, that's a field we can get into uh, later. The human body has many layers. Some last longer than the surface values and so forth. And we can get into that. But yes, the TM organization has defined many, many layers, even beyond Brahman consciousness. And so have other gurus, great gurus. And the Advaiti movement and the non-dual movement, we can get into that as a whole session all by itself. They got it right. They want to get people to the first stage. I personally call it the first stage because that's what it was for me. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Harry.
All righty. Nice question, though. I liked it. Yeah.
Thank
Okay, another question. This is more abstract. It sounds like the only difference between self-awareness and conscious self-awareness is the conscious part. On what level does this consciousness occur? It does sound like it's experiential, nor cognitive, nor emotional. Maybe he meant to say it does not sound like it, whatever, nor emotional. What is it?
The thing is, in my experience, and it hasn't always been this way, but it certainly has been for a long time, that there's no difference in the surface level of my thinking or the deep levels of my thinking. I don't relate to it that way. There's one level. It's an ocean with a surface, a middle ground, and a depth. It's all one ocean. Now, that one ocean of consciousness includes the body, the physiology, the senses, the heart, the mind, my immediate environment, distant environment. All of those layers are included in that one consciousness. It's except they're layers. I can see them. This. They're not there. Everything is there. Everything is part of the whole. In fact, the parts make the whole. In fact, the parts make something greater than the whole. And I would say that would be the experiencer, me, the experiencer of the whole show. I am all that, like that. Okay?
Okay, here's another question. This one might relate to a new meeting, but my question is related to how you perceive the multiplicity of beings at this point in your awakening process.
The multiplicity of what?
Beings.
Being or beings?
Yes, beings.
With an S.
Yes. How do you reconcile the seemingly multiple people with the one awareness?
Doesn't anybody have shallow questions to ask? What's with all these subtle questions? Okay. The thing is, just briefly, human consciousness, when it's broad enough and sees pure consciousness for what it is, sees it for the ocean that it is. Everybody's in that ocean. You're not alone. Everybody's in it. Now, everybody has their own experiences of that ocean or of that self-awareness and what's in it and the beings and so forth. And both people, physical people, and the divine levels of consciousness, that whoever occupies the heavens, they're also there. These personifications of the laws of nature are also there. You can see all this. I didn't mean to get into this kind of stuff in this talk, but yeah, it's all one ocean that includes everything. It has a surface, it has the fish and the whales swimming around, and it has a bottom, except the human consciousness ocean doesn't have a bottom. It's an ocean that's everywhere. It's total. It's a total ocean. It's a universal ocean. Except human consciousness has the capability of not only seeing all these layers, but being all these layers. I'm not talking about becoming a flat ocean. I'm talking about knowing the whole show, its waves, its middle ground, and its depths. And as a consequence, like I said earlier, I do not feel there is a depth or a surface. I feel it's one ocean with many layers, And if you look at it in an Eastern kind of a way, Indian kind of a way, Eastern Indian kind of a way, then you could get into all the different layers of the Veda. But they're nothing but different layers of your own consciousness. Nice question.
Yeah.
All of the questions have been subtle.
Okay, next question. Harry, I've been a seeker all my life. Your 10 minutes of the quote, disappearance of self-awareness is like most of my life. I listen to you and want so much what you have, but I guess my conditioning is so strong that such awareness keeps eluding me. Where to find it? Only dim glimpses come and go, so I keep up with the seeking.
Good question. And that was probably the one that's on many, many people's minds. Why am I going through what I'm going through? Why am I suffering? Why don't I see what historically or in the present day, many people are describing? Well, you could look at the gaining of self-awareness or realization as not something you're gaining. What's happening is something like clouds. They're in front of the sun. It's not a sunny day. A wind comes along and the clouds move aside. Maybe not all of them, some of the clouds, and you see the sun. What's obscuring this consciousness, this pure consciousness that you're experiencing or you're not experiencing, is that there's a kind of deep misunderstanding as well as a deep experience that hasn't clarified or developed enough. But rest assured, the sun is there. Pure consciousness is there. You couldn't be breathing or talking to me without that consciousness. It's in your heart, it's in your mind, it's in your body, your environment. You're not recognizing it because you said it yourself. You have some misconceptions. Everybody does. The vast majority of humankind has this massive misconception, but it's such a little thing. It's not a big thing. It's a little thing, but it causes untold suffering. And a seeker is a person who's seeking to understand why they don't experience something that they intuit is there anyway. But they're not seeing it. They're not getting the benefits. But here again, the only thing that can be said is that with the proper understanding, deep understanding, it'll lead to the experience of that self-awareness. That's why I talk about it. I've seen innumerable people wake up, not because I've woken them up. I don't take that kind of credit, but because they themselves have realized with sharing their experience with others and talking about them, and suddenly they got it. Seems impossible, but I've seen that many, 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 many times now. Okay.
Okay. Next question. Can you describe bliss?
Okay. Bliss is a concentrated value of love. You could say that pure consciousness, when you realize that you get into this universal state of kind of a cosmic feeling of, I don't know why I hesitate to say it, but on a quiet level, you feel like you love everything, but it's so quiet, it's almost imperceptible. Now, a concentrated value of that universal feeling of bliss or understanding of bliss that you now have in your heart and your mind on an individual level, when you put it on somebody you know, maybe a family member or a friend, then, and you feel, oh, I love that person. Let's call that bliss. It's just one way of looking at it. But that universal feeling of love or bliss translates itself into, I look at this, I look at that, and I feel the same thing, only in a concentrated way. It's like a wave of the ocean. A wave of the ocean of universal bliss. When it's concentrated, you could call it personal or individual bliss. Like that.
Okay. Another question. Lots of questions today. We've heard the phrase awareness turns back on itself. What does that really mean?
It means that in the beginning days, when you're a seeker, everything's outside. Everything's outside. You don't have an insight that you understand yet, or that you get yet, but you will. So in a sense, when, say, you meditate or you do self-inquiry or mindfulness, whatever it is you do, you pray, you go inside, it's like you're turning the whole thing around. Suddenly you're an inner being. You have inner light or inner consciousness or inner inquiry. And it's not really inner, but it temporarily is. You're turning back on the self because it appears like, say you meditate, it feels like you're transcending, you're going inside. You're not really going inside. What's really happening is the light of consciousness itself is getting realized. It's illuminating your understanding or illuminating your experience. But it feels like temporarily that you're going inside, you're turning around, right?
Okay. How does one tell the difference between right understanding and delusion? It seems that the mind has an innate way to create stories, not based on facts, but on ideas, to explain what is. And I can get very attached to what the mind is telling, quote, me.
The great thing about self-realization, if you want to call it that, is that you are right. When you are right, and when you are wrong, you won't go there. It's almost like a silent barrier. You won't go there. Now, well, you could get into this in a big way, but I've always said that there are schools of thought that talk about relative life. It's a big illusion. It's all useless. You don't want anything. You don't want it. I don't look at it that way. I look at illusion itself as an illusion. It has no reality. What is an illusion is that if you think of relative life from the point of a non-awake person, then you've got the wrong impression of what the relative is. It's not really what it appears to be. You could call that an illusion. What the relative is really is an aspect of your own consciousness, your own infinite eternal consciousness. And everybody gets caught up. Everybody gets caught up in this point or that point. And as long as those points that you're going through do not overshadow that pure consciousness, that overshadow that realization, then you're not getting lost in the illusion. But you have to be awake to be in that state. There you go.
Okay.
Okay, we'll take two more questions, okay?
Okay, here's another next one. I feel that it is so important to look at and listen to what is already here. What am I taking completely for granted? This is where it starts to unfold. I am aware and take that for granted. Would you agree?
Read it again.
I feel that it is so important to look at and listen to what is already here. What am I taking completely for granted? This is where it starts to unfold. I am aware and take that for granted. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I've been saying, that this pure consciousness state, the self-realization state, isn't even a state, really. It's a reality of your own existence. It's pre-existent totality, pre-existent consciousness. It's always there. It's in the present. You know, if I were to tell you I woke up 30 years ago, I would be lying to you, because it feels like I wake up every time I open my mouth or do something. It's not in the past. It's eternal and infinite. And being eternal and infinite, it's the now experience. It's right now. I'm having this experience now. And if I describe it as if it happened in the past, um, you don't want to ignore those kind of sequential events, but those sequential events are all happening within you now. It's a memory that you have now. So in a sense, I'm saying exactly what you're saying. I don't think it's any different. And we say these things in our own particular way. If one person wakes up, they'll describe that wake up state in one way. It's the same state, except because it's running through your physiology, your nervous system. You're not built the same way somebody else is, and your speech will not come out the same way. It'll come out different. Okay?
Okay, here's one that's very sort of going in a different direction. Here is a less profound question for you. From your perspective, how do you see the recent political chaos, the goings on with the invasion of the Capitol, Trump, etc.?
What was the question? How do I see it?
Yeah, how do you see the recent political chaos, the goings on with the invasion of the Capitol, Trump, etc.?
Well, you only have to look at history to see there's always something very chaotic going on in the world. As a matter of fact, that's why all of us are sitting here. We want to have a state of consciousness that is not overshadowed by what's going on in our immediate country or our immediate town or our immediate family. That's those kind of events push us in the right direction, pushes the right people in the right direction. That's how I look at it. Of course, I watch the stuff just like everybody else.
Okay, so I think there's just a comment I want to make. Somebody asked for a short meditation before closing, but my thoughts on this is that there's too many of us practicing a lot of different, we're not all doing the same technique. That probably doesn't matter, but maybe a lot of these people don't even meditate. So I'm thinking maybe, what do you think, Harry? Short meditation?
I agree with you, at least at this point. And, if this group kind of over time gets established and we know each other, and although there seem to be quite a lot of people to know, we'll see. But yeah, I think we're doing so many different things here. Until we actually know each other a little better, I think we won't do that. But your point is well taken, that, meditation is one of the primary ways to gain this self-realization state that we're talking about. I would like to thank everybody for being here.
Great. Harry,
Yes,
there's
yes.
just one more question. We may as well cover it because it's the last question, right?
Okay.
And I think you can do it quickly. I finished your book last night and found it profound and moving. My question concerns your understanding of the word unbounded, which you use the most to describe your experience. Can you send us your cognization of, quote, unbounded?
My next book doesn't talk about unboundedness quite so much. By unboundedness, when I wrote that book, I thought of unboundedness. In the early days of experiencing inner awareness, it's difficult to describe. Unboundedness is one way, and I say unbounded because I don't see any boundaries. It's like looking at the sky. There's nothing there. There's a blue sky, cloudless day. There's no sides to it. Now, if you see something flying, even a sparrow flying across your field of vision, suddenly this scale says, whoa, that sky is huge. Now, if your experience doesn't have anything like that, it's just this cloudless consciousness, it seems a good way to describe pure consciousness, like that. Okay?
Great.
So thank you everybody for coming. It's a nice big group again. So I will do this again in roughly 1 month, and you're all welcome and invited to come again. And I love the questions. They're very profound and very useful. And I hope everybody gets something out of this, because I certainly do.